Perfect. Lance, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for jumping on board.
Yeah, this is
Um,
cool.
yeah, so I guess tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'll give you like the professional story. Um, so my background's in the fitness industry, and I did that since I was 17. And at one point, I owned a martial arts school. This is going back 8 years ago. And while I had that gym, the main way that we got leads and new members was all through Facebook, 100% through Facebook. Unless on the odd occasion someone walked in, it was all about just advertising and promoting the club through Facebook. And since then, like changed careers and stuff. And now what I do is social media marketing full time. So it's my full time gig, and I work with a wide range of different companies. And we don't just stick to Facebook. We do things on Google and Instagram and LinkedIn and all sorts of stuff. But that's sort of how it came to be.
Yeah, very interesting. How was the transition from obviously like fitness industry? Obviously you were still doing like marketing through your business, I suppose. But how was the
Mm.
transition going from running a business, I guess, in the fitness industry to then obviously going and running like a like marketing company, I guess you could call it a. Hopefully, I'm right there with that.
Yeah, it's like agency is sort of the term, but easier because it's a less moving parts. When you
Okay.
work in like the fitness industry, you sort of work obviously with a team of trainers, but then you have to work around the schedule of the people showing up. So if you run 5 classes a day, you have to be there 5 times a day. And if you're running 6 days a week, like it's a massive demand on you personally. And also the energy demand if you're teaching a lot. Like I was coaching heaps of classes, particularly kids classes, was that's hard work. Like it's a lot to teach 6-year-olds every day of the week.
Yeah.
So doing this is a little bit different. I have a little team of just contractors and like virtual assistants that I use, but it's pretty much just me and my laptop and just working one-on-one in my own time.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. And obviously the business itself is going quite well. You've been running the business itself for, is it about a year or so?
Yeah. So the business is called the Digital Marketing Ninja,
Yep.
and I started it in December of 2019.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Perfect.
conveniently, just before COVID happened, right? So like ideal time to start a business, right?
Yeah.
So I started it, and it's started really slowly. But what happened was within a few months, like I started doing some stuff for my dad on the side, and then another friend asked if I can come and do things for his business, and then another friend, and then a family member, and it just kind of naturally grew. And
Yeah.
I tried to keep it all manageable because I've seen people grow their business either too quick and then it like all spirals out of control. And at the same time, it's easy to get overwhelmed as well. Like if you take on too much stuff and then you start doing a shit job with all your other clients. So I just sort of had like realistic milestones over a 12-month period where I wanted it, where it was like a part-time side hustle and then it became a full-time gig. And now I'm at the point where I'm like growing the client base out.
Awesome. Very cool. Good timing. Hey, obviously jumping in just before COVID hit, and like basically the business itself is obviously purely all online, really, is it?
Yeah, it was. But I tell you what, at the very beginning, when we all started getting JobKeeper, I was so grateful because I didn't have much money coming in the door at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely. Great timing. So you're obviously quite well versed in Facebook marketing, running ads, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my interest has always been towards like the paid advertising side of stuff. So
Okay.
so with online advertising, there's paid and organic. So there's basically two different ways you can go about doing it. Organic is what most people think of when they think of Facebook, is just like posting content up regularly. But then there's the paid advertising, which are the ads that you see in your news feed or on the side of the desktop or in your chat and stuff like that. And they tend to get better results because Facebook prioritizes that as like for traffic because you're paying for it. So that's sort of what I focus on personally. Like that's what I do. But within the business, I hire in other people in my team to focus on different things like doing LinkedIn campaigns for Google AdWords or SEO and all that stuff. So we're able to do like the whole gamut because every business is different as to what it needs to get more clients. Because your market may or may not be on Facebook, right? If you're selling some professional service, Facebook may not be the best place to be.
Yeah. Is there much overlap between the different platforms? Like, is advertising on Facebook completely different to like advertising on LinkedIn, for example?
Yeah, because people are in a different frame of mind on each platform. And even I'll give you a really good example. So I don't know if you're aware, but Facebook and Instagram actually share the same back end. They share the same advertising behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Um, so even that, it's two separate markets, because the people that are on Facebook versus the people that are on Instagram can often be different. And at the same time, the type of content people consume on Instagram is different to Facebook. The behavior of people is different for each. So one method that's pretty common when it comes to like advertising online is you can just take one bit of content and share it across everything. And that's probably like the easiest, most efficient thing to do. But the next level above that is to start crafting different messages for different audiences and different platforms. But it's super time consuming. And even I don't do that because it's not an efficient spend of time.
Yeah. Could imagine, obviously, yeah, editing, multiple pieces of footage or content and stuff would get pretty time consuming if you're kind of, pushing out different messages onto different platforms.
Yeah, but you're definitely right. Like each platform is unique, and
Yeah.
people are either using it differently, and their behavior on there is different. Because if, for example, somebody is on LinkedIn, they're more in like a professional mindset, and you
Mhm.
probably don't notice there's not as many cat videos and funny memes and like banter going on LinkedIn. Whereas on Facebook, it's the total opposite. So people will express different parts of their personality depending on which platform they're on, and you kind of have to craft a message based on that.
Yeah. Very interesting. What are your thoughts on like some of the newer platforms like Clubhouse, TikTok, that sort of stuff? Have you had much to deal with any of those?
I haven't had a whole lot to do with them, as in professionally, so I haven't used them for clients or anything, but I'm sort of well aware of it. And I got onto TikTok real early. So anytime I hear of a new thing, I'll just like jump in and download it and see what it's all about. But yeah, like for those people that don't know, Clubhouse is going to be like the next big talked about thing that will be coming up in the next few weeks.
Mhm.
And basically, what that is that's a voice only platform. So the easiest way to describe it is it's like a conference call where there's rooms. So you can have a public room or a private room. And in those rooms, you have a speaker and you have an audience. But there's also the option that the speaker can designate someone else to be a speaker. So I could open the floor up to questions from yourself. So you could start adding to the conversation, or I could ask someone else to speak as well. So the kind of people that are going to be using that are going to be like teachers, consultants, coaches, anyone who wants to sort of get a group together and sort of share their message. That's like a professional thing. What's definitely going to happen is like you and all your friends will get on there and just start having banter over voice, which would be fun.
Yeah, cool.
But what made Clubhouse sort of get popularity, and what's going to make it kind of get more in the media soon, is the whole invite only thing. So are you aware of that?
Yeah, I've had a couple of people like try and invite me to Clubhouse. A good friend of mine invited me about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but to be honest, I haven't really looked at it. So
Yeah, so the just part of the marketing hype, they decided to do invite only. So the only way you can get on the platform is if someone who has it gets you on there.
mm,
And it really took off with all the tech people. So like Elon Musk got on there, and he was on there early, and then a few of the other celebrities are getting on there now. So it's just sort of helping build the hype up. So it's not easily accessible, and it kind of makes it exclusive.
yeah,
And that's where it's sort of having a bit of a point of difference.
yeah,
So it's going to be one of those things that, like, for business, it may or may not be relevant for everybody, because depending on what you offer, right? And often when there's a new platform, people will have the question like, "Oh, do I go and invest all my time in it straight away?" And the answer is probably no, because you've got to make sure all your other like things are working well. Like, are you doing Google? Are you doing Facebook? Are you on Instagram? Are you on LinkedIn? Is your website getting traffic? So even that is heaps of work. So to go and add something like Clubhouse is like another thing you have to go and do. And if
mm.
it's really not relevant for your business, there's probably no point worrying about it just yet.
What sort of businesses do you see having relevance in the clubhouse space?
Like people who are influencers, so people who have that personal following, and people who are, you know, either speakers, coaches, consultant type people that can get a group together. And because it's audio only, it sort of is made. It's going to be a good platform for teaching. So I think that will be it'll be the sort of thing you go on to have like a conference call, you know,
Yeah, okay. So
sort of thing.
companies and stuff might adopt it as opposed to like before I left the bank, we were all doing like a daily Zoom call with another branch that the branch manager sort of um, he actually managed both like two branches in two separate locations. So we would just do a Zoom call every morning so that both sort of teams, I guess, are across the same thing. So you think maybe something like that for, you know, big companies and corporations and stuff, instead of obviously doing Zoom, they'll do just something audio based maybe?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, could be. Like that's how I would see it getting used, because it gives. Yeah, it's just another way of using something like voice, and I think voice is more convenient for people at the moment with everything that happened last year because we adopted Zoom so much, which is like a real visual based platform. But everyone's at home and like you know their back room's not the most aesthetically pleasing thing, and you're half dressed and you're in your pajamas half the time. So I think something that's voice only, where people can be on the road, in the car, they can be doing the dishes, and they can still be listening in and giving feedback as well. Like it's just a more flexible kind of platform as opposed to something like Zoom where you have to be locked in for a conversation.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense. I think audio seems to be like quite big, I would say. Podcasting and stuff's obviously got massive over the years. Personally, I listen to like probably 2 hours worth of podcasts every day. So I think you're right. Like it's so consumable. It's so easy to just, you know, chuck the podcast on. I normally hit the gym while I listen to a podcast for yeah, a couple of hours or whatever. It's just relatively consumable content. So I think audio is a pretty convenient way to, I don't know, get a message across.
Yeah. And so even on paper, audio seems like we're going backwards from video. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not the natural evolution of video. We're not going into virtual reality just yet. We're going back to audio. But the reason we're doing it is because like consumer behavior dictates the platforms that are coming out. And if people want convenience to get their information or listen to music or to be entertained or whatever, if they can do two things at once, like exercising and still listening to a podcast, or joining a conversation like on Clubhouse, that makes more sense. So that's probably why that trend's sort of happening.
Yeah. And you said you were an early adopter of TikTok as well. How did that sort of work out?
I'll clear up. By early adopter, I wasn't doing dances and stuff. Like I just downloaded the app to see what was going on. But TikTok, TikTok basically is a really good example of, again, like consumer behavior. And you tend to see kids, or like the teenagers are the ones who adopt technology early. And so anything that the sort of the tweens and the 13, 14-year-olds get on first is generally like the next platform that's going to build up and explode. But it's a good indicator of where behavior is going, and where we will be, or how we will be consuming information soon, like people our age or even older. So what I mean by that is TikTok is very short, and it creates like snackable content. And this whole idea of having like bite-sized pieces of content that give you a short dopamine rush and you can just scroll through it and get entertained endlessly. That's more how people are consuming content now. And TikTok did that really, really well. So people are going to TikTok for short form, like very short, under a minute kind of videos. And I think you'll see over time there'll be more of that, because as technology gets better, and as like the older generation of people, like everyone sort of our age and above, start adopting that kind of behavior, we'll be doing things in like 5-second intervals just to get entertained.
Yeah, okay. Is it mostly entertainment based, or is there like like educational content out on the platform itself, like on TikTok?
Yeah, so most of it is just like kids doing Fortnite dances, but there is a lot of like legitimate business people and stuff who are using it as a platform to just share their message on, and they might just talk to the camera, or they'll just create basic bits of content that aren't overly engaging, just normal stuff that you'd see. And they're using that. And one of the reasons why that's happened is because TikTok's like the hot new thing. So a lot of people are going to that platform. So organic reach on TikTok is actually way better than stuff like Facebook. So if you look at Facebook now, and you've probably experienced this with your business page, with the Matt Sharp page, like if you put up a post, it might only get like a handful of people of all your followers, like a handful would only see it. So over on Facebook, organic reach is actually getting is actually going down because they're prioritizing paid traffic. Whereas on TikTok, organic reach is actually really high. So if you post something on both platforms, you might get, say, 10 views on Facebook, but you might get 1,000 on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
The same was true for Instagram Reels. So did you see that feature come out a few months ago, or even a year ago when Reels came out?
Yeah, my missus is absolutely addicted to it, man. Spends hours just like watching stupid shit.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same. That was like that was Instagram's answer to TikTok, right? They had to keep up with the same consumer behavior. People wanted those snackable bits of information they can just scroll through. And what they were doing was they were prioritizing, if you put up a reel, they were prioritizing that into people's grids and feeds so that it was getting way more views, that people were getting rewarded for doing it and staying on the Instagram platform.
Yeah, interesting. There's obviously, so there's a lot more to, I guess, you know, marketing on social media than I suppose a lot of people would think. Like, we talked before, and I think you'd said something about likes not paying the bills and stuff like that. So you actually got to get people engaging within your content that you're posting and stuff like that. Is that kind of correct? Am I sort of on the right page there?
Yeah. So the Vanity Metrics, like likes and follows, when it comes to business, right? So if you're not doing this as someone who's just wanting to collect following, but for actual business, where what you're measuring is like dollars in the door, likes and follows are pretty much irrelevant. And the reason for that is you can have 1,000 people watching your stuff, but they're not the right people. You know what I mean? And you can have one person watching your stuff and they're the right person who might spend a whole bunch of money with you. So that's why you've got to like target your message. And it's easy to get hung up on numbers, but the reality is a lot of influencers with like 30,000 followers on Instagram, you know, those like local Perth celebrity influencers, fitness model stuff.
Yeah.
They're not making really anything from that. And the fitness industry is super guilty of this. For example, a lot of like female like fitness influencers, they all have hundreds and thousands of followers, but they're just dudes. They're just horny guys. And they're trying to sell. And so these female influencers will try and sell their, 8-week booty challenge to a whole market of guys. And there's a mismatch. Do you understand what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So the numbers are really irrelevant in an example like that. But don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of people with a huge following that make some money on Instagram. But if you get too hung up in the metrics and you're not thinking about like, is this actually giving me a return, then it can be irrelevant.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. How do people obviously make money on Instagram and that sort of thing if they have massive followings? Is it mostly based like off of ad revenue, or what are the sort of avenues people go down to generate income?
Yeah, so we'll use Instagram as an example. So if you've got a large following that you've got organically on Instagram, generally people with products and services want to get that out, and influencer marketing's like a really good way of doing it. And it kind of works well for influencers because they constantly get this stream of products. And the people at the higher end of that game are getting paid to promote those products. Like Kylie Jenner and stuff like that gets paid ungodly amounts just to post about something because she's got millions and millions of people following her. But the smaller level influencers are still creating a lifestyle out of it. Like they're actually getting like really cool opportunities and products and getting paid to go on holidays and all this sort of thing. So I guess that's how it's used. They're actually taking advantage of that following. At the same time, that you can do paid advertising on Instagram, but as an influencer, that would probably be you'd be using it different. But yeah, to like monetize your following, it's generally through influencer marketing.
Yeah, interesting. Have you had much experience with YouTube at all?
A little bit, not a huge amount. but
Yeah.
I have a bit of an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm guessing obviously because it's a completely different platform again. Yeah, obviously a different sort of angle and different audience.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like in what I do, I have to kind of draw the line somewhere, because otherwise that you can get into this infinite wormhole of things that you have to learn and keep doing. But YouTube's just another tool, and it's just another platform that if you've got the right business and the right personality for it, then it's really good. You know what I mean? Someone with great personality that can present and they might be good looking and all that sort of stuff could do really well off it, presenting their content and getting a huge following. But I'm not sure about monetizing it. Like I've heard all sorts of stuff, because you hear about YouTubers who are making millions through YouTube, and then you hear them cry poverty as well. I've heard kind of both. So yeah, I haven't had enough experience with it to know sort of how to monetize it and what the reality is of doing that.
Yeah. For a business owner, where would you obviously advise them to spend money and time? Would it be dependent on the business as to what platform they would market towards, or what sort of advice do you normally give businesses when they, I guess, first approach you?
Yeah. So when I work with someone, basically we'll sit down and we'll have a chat. And the first thing we do is we get really clear on what their target customer looks like. So we figure that out. Then the second thing we do is we work out what the offer is. So once you know who you're going to market to and what you're going to sell them, then we go and find where those people are hanging out on the internet. So you might find, if, for example, you're a clothing brand and you're selling to 14-year-old boys, then maybe something like Snapchat and TikTok is going to be a great platform. But if you're selling B2B services, then LinkedIn's going to work really well. So they're like two extreme examples, right? But there's everything in between. So essentially, it depends on the business and the product and service that you're selling. So you got to figure out your customer. You got to figure out what you're going to offer them. Find out where they are on the internet, and then from there you create a campaign or a client machine, as I call them, around that. So you can go and advertise on those platforms. But really, it's the big ones that tend to do the best. So having a presence on Google is super important. Being on Facebook and being on LinkedIn, like they're probably like the core three. And then anything outside of that, is nice to have. But there's people that make whole careers off like only Instagram or only Pinterest and that sort of stuff. But I'd say just like general local businesses, having your basics is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And do you yourself have like niche sort of target market? Like obviously your background's fitness and the fitness industry. Do you target businesses based off of that, or have you? I know you've sort of branched out into. I think I've seen like a chiropractor and like maybe a cafe somewhere in there as well. So obviously, like, what's your target market? I guess.
Yeah, so I enjoy working with everyone because I like the challenge of different industries and businesses,
Mhm.
which in its own isn't probably like the right thing to do. The right thing to do is probably to have like a niche and to go deeper into the niche. Uh, so that being said, I do work a lot with people in like the health and wellness space, just because I sort of have a background in that, and it's kind of what I'm interested in. So I've worked currently working with a chiropractor that just came on last week. I previously worked with a physio, worked with a meal prep company. I did a bunch of stuff with like a beauty therapist for a while. So we were doing all these campaigns in that sort of space. I work with a medical center as well, a series of medical centers. So that's like an interest. But at the same time, like 2 weeks ago, I was promoting a Fringe festival show, so doing a comedy show for Fringe, and we helped sell that out.
Yeah.
One of my bigger clients is a signage company, so it's like a full broad spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, but I've just got more of a natural interest in like the health and well-being stuff.
Yeah. And how, so I've spoken to you a little bit about this before, after training, I think, but you kind of go into, or we were talking about, how like it might take 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of different content to finally have something sort of land with your target audience or target market.
Yeah.
How do you, I guess, go about structuring something like that? Is it purely just sort of like you've got a general idea of what you think might work, and then you kind of almost sort of go fishing and just test a few different pieces out and see which one kind of works the best, or how do you sort of, I guess, like organize it?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So the old kind of thing you would hear in business is that it takes like 6 touch points before somebody buys from you. So they need to hear about you and see your product and stuff 6 times, and then they'll make a buying decision. More recently, I've heard that number to be higher, so more like 15, 16 touch points, just because we're living in an age where we're bombarded with more information. But either way, you've got to be constantly in front of someone before they buy, because most of the time they may not purchase straight away. And I think that's pretty common. Like, just because you hear about something, it'll get your attention, but you're not necessarily going to do an impulse purchase immediately. Most of the time, anyway. So how do you do that? So you've got to have like an omnipresent strategy where you're always out there.
Okay.
And basically figuring out some key messages in your business, and then always promoting all the time across different platforms. And there's a lot of different ways you could do that, but I'll give you some examples. Like if you think about Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, right? So if you had those 3, if you were constantly posting content on there and running paid advertisements across all 3 platforms, you're going to get in front of the same people every day. It's just going to be a regular touch point with those people. So your followers or people that you're targeting through advertising. And eventually over time, what that does is it just builds trust and rapport. So they might not buy from you today, but in 12 months, if they're seeing your content and they're liking it and they find it interesting and they like to hear your thoughts on stuff, over a 12-month period, that adds up. And eventually, when they're in the right frame of mind to buy, they'll probably come to you as the expert in their sphere to purchase from.
Right. So like, yeah, very interesting point. Like when I was first taught sales, the only sort of 2 major messages that ever stuck with me were getting the person to like you and trust you and build rapport were the main ones. So you've kind of just like, I don't know, said it to me in a way that I understand, but also like using a platform, like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Obviously that's possible. I guess a lot of businesses are successful in doing that over those sort of platforms, and that's how they generate or eventually generate sales. Is that sort of kind of right?
Yeah, so that's basically it. So it's just an online version of like old school sales. Instead of being face to face, it's all online. And it brings up the point. There's two types of philosophies. There's like branding and brand awareness, which is like a longer term play. So it's like a long term marketing strategy where people will see your brand over a period of time. And the example you always hear given about this is like the brand Nike. And they don't really have billboards and stuff, but people are always buying the shoes just because there's so much equity behind that brand. We've grown up with it, and we've got celebrities and heroes associated with it. So, we want to go and purchase that to be like that. And then you've got sales and marketing, which is more immediate. And that's where you're actually trying to convert a customer and the process of doing that. So they're 2 different strategies, and you need both. One's more short term, one's more long term. But the branding stuff is the more sharing of your philosophy and your message, whereas the marketing and sales stuff is the process of asking somebody to buy from you,
right? Gotcha.
Pulling them to action and getting them to come and try out your product.
Yeah, very interesting. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your time when you were obviously running the martial arts academy. Yeah, obviously myself and Adam currently run Mat Shark Jiu-Jitsu, so it would be an opportunity missed if I didn't sort of pick your brain about that. But yeah, can you talk to me about your experience running a gym and how you sort of started, and then I guess I know you scaled up, over the course of a few years, and then obviously eventually decided that it wasn't for you anymore. So yeah, talk to me about that journey.
Yeah, so my background in martial arts was in Taekwondo. I grew up doing that as a kid. And I trained at 2 different clubs, and both of those clubs were like McDojos. So they had thousands of members, thousands and thousands. So I grew up and got my black belt at the ripe age of 14 from one club. And then as an adult, I got back into it, and I started teaching there, and I taught full time. So I was teaching a lot of classes a week, probably somewhere in the realm of like 25 classes a week, maybe.
Wow.
And I was teaching from 3-year-olds through to like adults classes in Taekwondo. But what that taught me is like how the operational level of running a large martial arts school and all the systems behind that, and how to structure stuff and syllabus, and also the marketing and sales that went behind the McDojo model. And I didn't like the whole philosophy of having a big school, like a really big school, but I like the idea of having my own business and kind of scaling it down and still it being personal. So how it came about, I'll give you the short version. So I had a friend, and he was effectively a business partner. He had a property, and he leased the property for me at a very low rate. And what I did before I even started the gym is I went out to the market and did my market research. So I went on Gumtree and Facebook, and I advertised to the people of the Armidale area, which is where the gym was. And I said, Octagon MMA is going to be starting in January of 2013. If you're interested, give me your name, number, and email, and we'll let you know as soon as we open. So at that point, I hadn't signed a lease, I hadn't bought any equipment, I hadn't spent any money, nothing. But I was just doing my research to go and figure out if there is actually a market. And there was a huge response, like overwhelmingly huge. I had about 300 inquiries within the first month of running that. So I didn't expect that at all. So I had this list of 300 names and numbers of people in the local area that wanted to be kept up to date. And that was kind of like evidence for me to go and start the business and actually move ahead with it. So that's when I signed the lease, got a bunch of mats, got a bunch of bags, and decked it out. And from there, I then pre-sold a number of memberships. So before we even opened. So I went back to that list of 300 saying, hey, we're just about open. If you want to get a cheap rate, you can do it now, lock it in for the year. So I did that. So that guaranteed me 12 months of income from about 30 different members before we even opened. And then we opened the gym. And within, I would say 3 months, it was well over 100 members. I think we got up to about 150, I think, at the highest.
Wow.
And it was mainly a big kids program. So I would say about 80 of those like students were kids, and I was teaching like my own sort of hybrid traditional martial arts thing. And then I brought other coaches in to teach the adults program. So I had a Muay Thai expert. I had a couple of black belts teaching the BJJ and MMA classes, and we had like a fitness class as well. So that was kind of how it all sort of started. And then the continual stream of getting people in the door all came through Facebook. Yeah. And I tried stuff like advertising in the local newspaper and doing flyer drops, and all that was it's like super expensive, and it didn't generate anything.
Yeah.
Didn't generate any response at all. So I just found, Facebook was the best medium. And at that time, Facebook was, it was different advertising on there now as it was to back then. Back then, all you could do was like sponsor a post. That was basically it. And you could target the area. I don't think you could go any more deeper than that. Whereas now on Facebook, you can target people's age, their gender. You can target them by their job role. You can target them by, life events. So if someone recently got engaged, you can target them, or if they're, just bought a house. Yeah. So you can go real deep with that. But back then it was just like targeting local area.
Yeah.
And it worked really well. So that was like how the business sort of came to be. And then we ran that for a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. How long were you in business for?
Business ran for about 2 years. And then ultimately, so the guy who I was partnered with, him and I, we just, as you do, go our separate ways. And it was just a better decision to move away and just walk away from business. Yeah.
And I remember at the time, I think, were you a blue belt maybe at the time when you were running that? I remember you were training quite heavily in MMA. Is that right?
Yeah, which is how we met. So that was the time I was coming up to Armour to train during the day, which is when I met yourself and Adam. And I was getting all my jiu-jitsu and MMA training in, during the days a couple of times a week.
Yeah. Yeah, you were training with Steve Kennedy?
Yeah, getting beaten up by him 3 days a week, yeah.
Yeah, I got to take my hat off to you. That's a scary line to walk, I could say.
Yeah, yeah, I learned a lot. Yeah.
What was the goal? Were you just doing it to test yourself, or did you want to, pursue something professionally? Where were you sort of going with the MMA sort of stuff?
I just wanted to be rounded. Like, okay, so for martial arts for me is about self defense first and foremost, and so the idea of only being good at striking is limited, and only being good at ground fighting is limited. And so you got to have all your skills in place. And I had done like kickboxing for so long and taekwondo for so long that I needed to like adopt like rounded skill set. So I was really into like jiu-jitsu and I was doing that, but I wasn't taking jiu-jitsu seriously. I was maybe only doing it like twice a week. But my main focus was on like jiu-jitsu with an MMA focus because it transferred to self-defense way better than jiu-jitsu on its own.
Yeah.
And that's all I was really interested in, was like having a period of my life where I was really focused on mixed martial arts, just so I could really develop like really practical self-defense skills.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you competed a few times, yeah?
Yeah. I had a couple of fights, and that was a good experience. I probably wouldn't do it again. It's because it's so full on. Like the training for a fight is like, think about it now. Like how many times a week do you have to train jiu-jitsu now? And then if you've got other arts that you've got to focus on, like kickboxing and boxing and wrestling and specific MMA training and sparring, it's a lot of time invested. And
Yeah.
then and then fighting at just like a low amateur level is all I did. A couple of amateur fights.
How was I was talking to one of my other guests, Matt, about this actually, but how was the nerves like competing before an MMA event versus competing for like a jiu-jitsu tournament? Is it different, the same?
Totally different.
Yeah, totally.
Totally different. Yeah,
Yeah.
one's a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're like obviously like in the back of your mind, you're going like, if I don't do well in this MMA bout that I'm having, I could potentially, obviously get seriously injured. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't do well in MMA, like you're getting cuts and a broken nose and losing teeth. Like that's actually what happens. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's still fun and it's enjoyable and everyone's kind of friends at the end of it.
Yeah.
Um, so the good thing about that is there's like this like urgency to train heaps. Like the training is very focused.
Yeah. Okay.
You
So you're
have
like,
to, you have to, you can't half-ass it. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to do your best. Yeah.
yeah. Like in jiu-jitsu, sometimes you can kind of just go through the motions, hey, and it's like, oh well, just another day on the mats. Like,
Yeah. Sometimes.
yeah.
But for me, like I was never strong at fighting. Like I was never a good fighter. I just don't think I had the right mindset for it. But that was the reason why I wanted to keep doing it, is because I was so frightened of it that I had to keep forcing myself to do it. And then you can sort of get a handle on it. But like I would have made a terrible MMA career, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so you took a bit of time off after the gym shut. You kind of went into wrestling, purely just doing wrestling. Is that right?
Yeah. So I kind of did the MMA thing for a while, and uh, and then sort of after that, I just wanted to pursue wrestling more. I was intrigued by it, so I went and did that for maybe 3 years, just wrestling,
Yeah.
and left everything else behind. And then professionally, I had closed the gym at that point, and I was just working in the fitness industry again, like just in gym manager roles and things like that, PT, doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like wrestling was my main focus at that time.
Yeah. How have you found trying to blend like that wrestling with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Um, we were talking about this recently. So it's like it's two different sports and two different skill sets. And the things that you learn in wrestling tend to not, they're still there in jiu-jitsu. Like people know them. People know what a double leg takedown is, and people know, how to sprawl. But it's just not as emphasized and it's not as refined. And in jiu-jitsu, your takedowns is like the first minute of the match. It's such a small percentage of the whole match, whereas in wrestling, that's 99% of it. So it's kind of inversed.
Yeah.
So the skills you get from it are valuable on the feet, but then not a huge amount transfers to the ground. The mentality you get's good, like that willingness to scramble and to not give up and to be like a little bit pig-headed with things. But at a certain level in jiu-jitsu, that gets you in trouble. And that's what I was saying. The challenge I've always found is like you put your neck into things, or you're leaving arms out and giving up your back too easily because you're trying to like wrestle your way out of stuff as opposed to play the jiu-jitsu game.
Yeah. One thing I found interesting, yeah, we were talking about this, I think it was yesterday after training, and you were saying, of all the years of wrestling you've done, you've actually never hit a takedown in a jiu-jitsu competition, and it's, you know, mostly based off of like your aggression and stuff. When you're on the feet, you're kind of like, you know, worrying a lot of people out of that standing position, and you're finding a lot of people just, you know, pulling guard and that sort of thing. That's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, it's like I found the risk to reward is not that great. Like at the higher levels, if you shoot a takedown on someone and if it's not super well calculated, it's easy to fall into their guard or into their game or get guillotined and things like that. So it's a little bit risky, but the things you do get from wrestling is like really good hand fighting and really good stance and motion, learning how to control the fight on the feet and how to snap guys down and move them and get angles and things. And that's more of, to me, what I got value from.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
Yeah. When Craig Jones was here a couple of years ago, he came to Matt Shark, did a seminar, and we were sort of obviously picking his brain about what he thinks might be the next like big thing within the jiu-jitsu scene. He was talking about no-gi like gripping sequences, and he was saying a lot of guys at the top end were training wrestling obviously as a weapon, but also picking up how wrestlers grip no-gi. Obviously, gi jiu-jitsu and no-gi jiu-jitsu, for anyone that's ever done both, will understand that like very some of the core positions are like similar. Obviously, you know, the mount, back control, etc. But like the grips that you use to control people are completely different. Did you have any sort of things that you'd found coming across, obviously from wrestling, in terms of like different gripping sequences and different controls and stuff that jiu-jitsu guys could be implementing to, like, you know, common moves that might make the move work, you know, quite a bit better?
It's a good question. The hand fighting, definitely.
Yep.
And hand fighting for a control, whether it's on the feet or on the ground, but more likely on the feet. Like that's a weakness for a lot of people in jiu-jitsu. They don't really learn those sequences of how to hand fight and how to stand and how to if someone's gripped their neck, how to take that off safely, and things like that without giving up their stance. So that to me was like the big one. Some of that transfers to the ground as well, like getting 2-on-1s and different grips, like different like butterfly locks and things, and just knowing how to squeeze as well. They're things that are more emphasized because they're trained in isolation in wrestling. So they're emphasized over there in that sport way more than we necessarily need them in jiu-jitsu. So if you can bring those little things across, I think it helps.
Yeah. Well, all right.
Tell me about Bitcoin. Why should I buy Bitcoin? Because I have none.
I can tell you why you should buy Bitcoin. Look, I think it's, you know, pretty apparent that it's becoming more and more popular. It started out as like a peer-to-peer digital currency. It's only been around since 2009, so not a long time. I think it's 12 years this year. But it's kind of morphed more into like a store of value. So I'm currently reading a book by a pretty well-known Austrian economist by the name of Seyfedin Amos. It's a strange name, but long story short, he goes through the history of money, so all the way back to like the gold standard, and beyond that as well, like when different civilizations and stuff were using, you know, different tools to trade with. Like there's a tribe somewhere in Africa that was using like shells and stuff. And then European settlers came to that island, figured out that that's what they were using as their currency. Lo and behold, like they had a shit ton of these shells that they could obviously bring across on boats, which then obviously, you know, caused inflation, and the currency itself became devalued, and then they obviously had to move away from that to a different medium of exchange. The same thing happens, with our currency all the time, and more recently as well with um, like the central banks and stuff starting to print, more money in the forms of, stimulus and that sort of thing, off the back of um, the COVID pandemic. So a lot of smarter people than me, that I listen to are suggesting that, inflation is going to become a real problem, like a real big problem, a lot sooner than people think. And people are hedging their bets as to using Bitcoin as more of a store of value rather than like some kind of currency that you can, readily trade with. So yeah, look, I think in terms of what Bitcoin will, potentially become, is I try and think of it as more of like, it's kind of like gold, I guess. So people are going to start, storing value within that particular asset. And I say asset, in the sense that it's actually, um, in an entirely new asset class compared to, something that has some kind of, like tangible backing, like for example, like a house obviously is also an asset, but something completely different, to Bitcoin. So I think, over the next couple of years, it's going to be quite interesting. This year's already been super interesting in the space. Well, 2 days ago, Elon Musk posted about Tesla buying $1.5 billion
Saw that.
worth of Bitcoin. Yeah, man,
Yeah.
it just like it, the Twitter went nuts, and obviously the price of Bitcoin went nuts. It climbed in a 24-hour period. I think it climbed its about $7,000, which is the most
Wow.
done in a 24-hour period since its existence. So I think there's an avalanche of like institutional investment coming into the space. Elon actually wasn't the first. Guy named Michael Saylor, who runs an investment company called Strategy. He was one of the first like institutional investors to jump on board Bitcoin, and he's made significant amounts of money. And yeah, like a lot of smart people are talking about Bitcoin being relatively important and like the way of the future, I guess. So that's what I would say to someone in I guess, a brief 5-minute explanation.
Yeah. So I heard about Bitcoin in 2012. That was the first time I heard about it. And I thought, oh, yeah, it's interesting. You know, maybe one day I'll get some. And I didn't.
Yeah.
And I think if I had that now, I couldn't even tell you what that would have been worth. Like one coin back then was maybe, I don't know, $30 or something. Like I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Um, but do you think now, because it's had like another run, do you think it will crash again and then rebuild? Or is it going to have a real big run and then naturally, like, because all these markets balance out, right? So
Yeah. Look, it's hard to say. I think it's going to be an interesting year. 2021 is going to be very interesting. Bitcoin's already, its previous all-time high was set in 2017. And I think it was just shy of $20,000. It was like 19,800. I can't exactly remember the figure, but just shy of $20,000.
is it like 60 now or something?
Yeah, it's so it's 40, say mid 40s, 45,000 US. So
Okay.
I think it cracked over 60,000 Australian.
Yeah.
Um, I spoke to a guy today. I actually used to work for him. He owned a gym, and I worked for him for about a year. And he quit the gym in 2017, I think he was saying, and he went into Bitcoin at, say, I think it was June or July of 2017. And towards the end of that year, Bitcoin had a very similar run where it peaked all the way up to that, just shy of that $20,000 figure. And he was saying that this time certainly feels like very different. The landscape's very different, although there are some similarities. It's going to be so hard to predict what actually happens. But I think, with people, like Elon and Tesla and stuff jumping on board, that to me is a pretty strong indicator that they're not going to be the only ones. And I've read, 4 or 5 different articles all saying, hey, Amazon, Apple, Google, all these massive companies are, probably either possibly already invested in Bitcoin or are strongly considering investing in Bitcoin, within the next 6 months. So that can only just, I guess, get more people on board. And Bitcoin's scarce. So the biggest thing that it has backing it is that it's scarce. So the more people that jump on board, obviously the price gets driven up. So I don't know, to answer your question, I don't really have an answer as
Yeah,
such,
yeah,
but I think it's going to be like quite an interesting year, that's for sure.
yeah. So what's the minimum you can purchase as a
Uh,
Bitcoin newbie? What's the minimum I can buy?
Man, you could
Or do I
honestly,
need to buy a coin? I don't buy a coin. I can buy a percentage of a coin, can't I?
yeah, man, you can literally, buy $10 worth.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's more, yeah. Um, so they call one unit of like a Bitcoin a Satoshi, and I think it's 100. It's either 100,000 or 100 million Satoshis equal one Bitcoin. So it can be divisible by that
Right.
amount.
Super
So
small.
yeah, very small.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like people ask me all the time, like, how do you invest or what do you do? Blah blah blah. My like I'm not an advisor whatsoever. My strategy when I started investing in Bitcoin was literally just I'd read The Richest Man in Babylon, and I remember him talking about investing 10% of your net worth in gold. And I
Yeah.
was like, all right, cool, I'm going to do that. But instead of investing in gold, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. And that's what I did. So every time I got paid, I would just invest a little bit, in Bitcoin every week.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't really care about the price at all. To be honest, I just kind of was just like, you know what, like I'd read a little bit about dollar cost averaging where basically, you don't worry about too much of the day-to-day fluctuations in the price. You just continuously sort of and consistently buy. And over time, Bitcoin's history has proven that it, continuously does go up on an upward trajectory, although it does, have relatively big, 20-30% corrections every now and then. Over the course of 5 years, none of that's going to matter. You're probably going to get in at whatever price point and end up down the road 5 years time, the price is going to be higher than what you bought in at. So that was
Yeah.
the strategy, I guess, when I started.
So if you got a long term perspective, that's probably a healthier way to invest than necessarily trying to like time the market and get rich this time and then sell out at the top and everything, and then it's going to crash 20%. And do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
100%. I think to be successful at, yeah, like playing the market, it becomes a full-time job. So this guy that I was just speaking about, this ex-gym owner that I used to work for, he does exactly that. So he literally day trades, you know, different altcoins and cryptocurrency for himself personally, and he also manages a fund that's worth quite a few mil. So yeah, he literally does that as a day job, and he said like, man, this current bull run, it's hard to not make money, but like he's hardly been sleeping and stuff, and like yeah, just you don't get any time to do anything else. So for the average everyday person, I don't think trying to play the market is probably a good strategy. I would lean way more towards investing in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a couple of other main cryptocurrencies as a long-term sort of investment rather than a get rich sort of quick type scheme that most people seem to think it is. So
yeah. So with purchasing it, what do I need to do if I was going to get some?
yeah,
You got me
again,
hooked.
yeah. Look, there's a few different avenues you can go down. There's quite a few good exchanges. Like if you're going to go through an exchange, I'd probably recommend Binance is really good.
Mhm.
Um, Another good one, an Australian-based one, CoinSpot. They're also quite good. You could
And
use.
so why would it matter who I go through? Is it just different? Like, do they take different percentages of a transaction, or?
Yeah, so the reason I would recommend if you were going to take it a bit more seriously to go through Binance is an exchange, so you can basically um, like put an order out into the market at a set price, and you get to determine that price. So say you don't want to pay whatever the market rate is. Say Bitcoin's trading at $45,000, and you're like, no, I don't want to pay $45,000 for a Bitcoin. I want to pay $44,000. So you can set your order at $44,000. And then if obviously the price is trading at that, someone else puts a trade on the other side of the table as a sell, and you end up picking that up, then you can obviously, yeah, you've got a bit more flexibility in terms of how you, I guess, can purchase with like exchanges like CoinJar, Coinbase, those sorts of exchanges where you don't have that flexibility. Basically, you're purchasing Bitcoin at like whatever market rate they set. So you might end up, yeah, I guess paying say $45,000 when you didn't really want to pay that. You could have maybe got in at 44 or $43,800, something like that. So it really depends on how much time I guess you're going to invest in learning about the space. In terms of like simple little hacks, you can, yeah, probably download CoinJar is pretty straightforward. Doesn't take much time. It's very simple. You can just link it to your bank account, buy some Bitcoin every time you get paid.
Yeah.
There's a really good.
And if
Sorry.
I want to convert it, does it get converted through the same app? So if I want to convert it to cash, would that all happen through the same app?
Yeah, exactly. So you would just basically buy and sell Bitcoin through that same app, and then you would cash the money out that's sitting in your wallet, basically into a bank account that you've got linked to that particular platform. So it's quite straightforward to do so. There's another app that's really good. Have you ever heard of Raise, or it used to be called Acorns? I think it was called.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to have that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's another app called Bamboo, which does the same thing, but you basically invest in, like your portfolio can invest in the crypto market.
Yeah, cool.
Um, so that's a really kind of like, you know, set and forget type of thing where basically you link it to your bank account. You make purchases as you normally do in your everyday life. You buy a coffee, whatever. Coffee costs you $4.90. The app will automatically round that purchase up to $5, and the 10 cents that you've just rounded up goes straight into this Bamboo wallet, and it invests into Bitcoin, Ethereum, or I think the other commodity is gold, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there's stuff like that as well that's very user friendly and quite easy to kind of operate. So I think most people just want like from my experience anyway, most people just want like a set and forget, very easy to kind of just like operate type system, which is fair enough. Like obviously we live in that sort of day and age where, yeah, things are coming at you thick and fast, and you don't really want another thing to sort of add to your add to your stress. So those sorts of things are pretty good. I would suggest for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I could just automate it
Yep,
and
100%.
purchase like yourself, like every paycheck, just purchase a small
Yeah,
amount over time and accrue it. Yeah.
yeah,
And I suppose if the idea is long-term buy and hold, then it doesn't matter if it crashes again.
not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at all. If you look at the history of the Bitcoin, price, it will go up and down, relatively like violently, I would say. So yeah, you can have like massive corrections where 30%, 40% of the value of Bitcoin drops, within a very short period of time. But over that 12-year history, the trajectory is like upward. It's always kind of moving north. So if you're in it for the long haul, which I think would probably be the most advisable strategy, then yeah, I don't really see many people losing out. So that's my strategy anyway.
So at what point, okay, so what's your number that you're going to sell and buy a G-Wagon? Like at what point are you going to sell out and convert it back to cash?
Yeah. Look, I've got, so how I've set my portfolio up, I trade on two different platforms, and then have, it's called a hardware wallet or cold storage wallet, where I keep the majority of my crypto, and the largest portion of my portfolio in. The other two exchanges I use, my goal for 2021 is to actually uh, like accrue $100,000, 100,000 US dollars in profit. And at that point, then I'll probably reward myself with, buying something. I do need a new car. If anyone's seen
Yeah.
my blue Camry, the paint's peeling off, and yeah, she's seen better days. And I've had it since 2008. So I probably time for a new car. But yeah, that's my goal. So at the moment, anyway, for this current year, I want to make 100,000 US dollars just day trading. I'll probably, in terms of cashing out my Bitcoin portfolio, I don't actually have a set number. I don't know. I would love to just hold on to it forever, to be fair,
Yeah.
and just see what happens. But yeah, I think being flexible within the market's probably also smart. While I want to hold it for a long period of time, I also don't want to just be blind to the fact that maybe one day the wheels do fall off, and it might be time to cash out. And obviously, cashing out at zero is pretty dumb. So yeah, I guess I'll be flexible in that regard. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. I could see it being like if it went up to 100,000 this year or something, like if it just skyrocketed, what would you do? Would you keep some, or would you take that 100 grand out? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that part of your plan? Because it
No,
would be so. I imagine it would be so. Um, what's the word? Seductive. Like if you had this massive gain in profit, way more than anticipated. I think it could be easy to get sucked into a lifestyle and spending it and all sorts of stuff.
yeah, definitely. Look, to be fair, I kind of, in my head, I want to make a smart, logical choice and say I probably would still just hold on to it, to be fair. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be hard. If it does go to $100,000, that'd be pretty cool. But I've got like I guess my crypto portfolio spread across a few different sort of, buckets and different altcoins. So, um, yeah, like I was kind of saying before, I try and sort of see Bitcoin and Ethereum as more like longer term, like stores of wealth, I guess, and value. So my plan with those is, yeah, to try and hold on. The saying is with diamond hands or with strong hands. So not cash out too easily or too readily. And then yeah, I guess play the market a bit more with the buckets that I have with altcoins. So if it goes to 100,000, I don't know. I'll have to make a decision. But to be honest, I'll probably just hold on to it and just sort of see where it goes. I'm kind of in it for the long haul. So
Yeah. No, I think you've got the right attitude.
yeah.
I had a close friend of mine got into day trading for a while. He was day trading forex, and he was the same sort as your mate. He'd live off his phone, and he would every 5 minutes check his phone, and he'd make trades and things like that. And over a 2 week period, he took 5 grand to about 90,000 in a really like crazy period of time.
Wow.
And but he didn't sell at that point where he should have sold, and he was just pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. And then the following time that I'd seen him, he'd just gone back down to like a few grand. So
Wow.
he just got carried away with his emotions, and he admitted that himself. And I
Yeah.
can understand, like if you think about having that short period of success, and then, well, if I got to 90, maybe I can get to 200, and it might just be as easy. But
Yeah. I've had a few people say the same thing. Hey, it's like the advice that you get across most like channels of content and stuff within the crypto space is like make sure you take profits. Like have a set plan where if you've invested, say, I don't know, $100 and that particular altcoin goes up 10% in a day, just take the profit and like leave the rest in. So like make sure you don't like hold on to an idea in your head that maybe this is going to go up to like 100 grand as an example, and get set in having that as the goal, rather like be smart about it, have a strategy, take profits when you like when you should, and then when obviously things do come crashing down, you're not just like left with nothing. So who was your friend? What was he doing? Obviously just day trading, and that was basically his full-time gig.
no, he's just been day trading for years as like a hobby, and he just got really into it and like studied a few like did some courses and programs, and um, like was getting results, so making a little bit of money, but then had this particular just success in a very short period of time, and you don't know how much of that is actual skill or how much of that is just complete luck. And yeah, he admitted he learned the hard way on that one, because when his account peaked to 90 grand, he was looking at used M3s and things like that, and like deciding how he's going to pay off his house. And then a few weeks later, he's back down to basically zero because he just didn't cash out when he should have.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that story is probably a little bit all too common, unfortunately.
I know.
Sad times. Do you reckon you'll end up investing?
Yeah, you've intrigued me, and I think I'll go and get just like, I don't know, a small amount just to go through the process of buying some. Because I think that's what's holding me back is like, I don't know, I've got this thing in my head that it's going to be this difficult rigmarole to go and sign up for an account and link my bank account and all this stuff, and I don't know how to cash it out. It's just a lack of knowledge.
Yep.
Where in reality is probably really easy from what you've said. Like I've just got to get on a few apps.
Yep.
But I think the process of doing it might help, and then I can go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a couple of different platforms that I was using, and like a lot of people say that as well. It's like, oh, how hard is it? And it's not really too difficult depending on who you go with. And one of the platforms I've been with for a little while, I've just set up a self-managed super fund for myself, and like a separate business account as well.
Yeah.
And the onboarding process for that, typically, like dealing with business accounts and stuff through like my previous banking job, was relatively like it was difficult, I guess. But like setting up the self-managed super fund and the business account, even as a like crypto wallet, was like relatively straightforward. And honestly, I got verified, which normally takes a little while. Got verified within 3 or 4 hours. So for an individual profile to be set up through, most companies nowadays is quite simple. Like, a couple of hours and away you go. You can start purchasing and selling stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I might go get like $100 a Bitcoin or something, just so I can have some and I can enjoy this roller coaster that you're on at the moment.
just dip the toes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, awesome. Look, I might cut it there. I think we're just over an hour. So, yeah, man, thanks so much for your time. Hey, really good insight. Appreciate you obviously jumping on.
That's right. Thanks for teaching me about crypto. It was cool.
No dramas. Thanks for teaching me about marketing.
All right, man. We'll chat soon.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, bud. Bye.